Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let's talk about some keyboard commands you should know if you write or edit text on your Mac. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 2,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about it, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. Now, lots of people love to use keyboard shortcuts for things, but not everybody. Some people prefer to use the mouse or trackpad to get things done. A lot of times this has to do with what you're doing on your Mac. For instance, if you're manipulating graphics or objects on the screen using the mouse or trackpad, it can be inconvenient to switch your hands to the keyboard to use a keyboard shortcut. But on the other hand, if you're typing, so you already have your fingers on the keyboard, then it makes sense to use some keyboard command there to move around in your text rather than having to switch one hand to a mouse or trackpad. So here I am in Pages, but this should work in all sorts of different apps. For instance, like TextEdit or in Mail or even filling out forms on the web. Now, of course, there are tons of keyboard commands in the menu bar, and a lot of them have to do with working with text. For instance, in the Edit menu, you've got Cut, Copy, and Paste. In the Format menu, you've got things like Bold, Italic, Underline, and so on. I'm not really talking about those in particular. I'm talking about actually moving the text cursor around. Now, the text cursor is that blinking line you see to the left of the first character here. Usually it's black, but in Pages the default color is this orange. A lot of people use the terms cursor and pointer interchangeably. Technically, this blinking line inside of text is the cursor, and the arrow that you move around with your mouse or trackpad is the pointer. Now, as we type, the cursor will stay to the right side of the text, showing us exactly where the next character will go. But we can move it around if you use the mouse or trackpad. Notice here now I've got the pointer here. It's an arrow, but if I move it over text, it changes to this other shape that shows me that if I click somewhere, it will reposition the text cursor. So this is a case of the pointer and the cursor working together. But you don't need to actually use the mouse or trackpad at all to move the text cursor around. Instead, you can use the arrow keys on your keyboard. The simplest example is to use the right arrow key to move the text cursor one character to the right. And you could, of course, use the left arrow key to move it one character to the left. And if you hold it down, it will move by itself. You don't have to keep tapping, but it will do so very slowly. Matter of fact, even tapping very quickly with your finger will take a while to get you to the next word or line. Now you can use the up and down arrows as well. Going down will take you to the closest text cursor position right underneath where you were. So you can continue to move down like that and move up as well. So this makes it a little bit quicker to get somewhere. But this is where knowing more advanced commands comes in handy. If you really want to move around quickly in your text, you probably want to do it by word, not by character. To do that, just hold down the Option key and then use the right or left arrow keys, and notice that the text cursor will always go to the end of the next word. So you could quickly jump forward by word or backward with the left arrow key. And if you use the Option key with the down arrow, it jumps to the end of the current paragraph. You can see it jumping there to the end of that paragraph. And if I use it again, it'll jump to the end of the next paragraph, and so on. And you could use the Option and up arrow key to jump to the beginning of each paragraph. So just by using the Option key, you can move very quickly through large amounts of text. Now, another modifier key that works with the arrow keys is the Command key. If I hold down Command and use the right arrow key, it goes to the end of the current line of text. So you can see it go there. If I use it again, it just will stay there. And Command and left arrow will go to the start of the current line of text. So I can go to a line like this, and if I'm going to jump to the end, Command right arrow will do it for me. Now, Command and down arrow will jump to the end of the document, and Command and up arrow will jump to the beginning of the document. Maybe not so useful when composing a long book, but very useful when working with a smaller piece of text like a posting or an email. Now, in addition to moving around, you can also select text using just the keyboard. The modifier key to use for that is the Shift key. And you can use this with the arrow keys. If I hold Shift down and go to the right with the right arrow key, notice it's not just moving the text cursor, it's actually increasing the selection to the right. If I just use the right arrow key by itself now, it releases the selection, and now I just have the cursor there that I'm moving around. I could use Shift and the left arrow key to increase the selection to the left. If I go with Shift right arrow, you could see how there is a cursor there. You just don't see it. And I'm actually increasing or decreasing the selection. I go all the way here to the right. You can see we'll increase it to the right and so on. So you can work with text to select some. And once you have text like this selected, you could, of course, use other keyboard commands like Command X for cut, Command C for copy, and Command V for paste for working with that text. And of course, another thing you can do once you have something selected is simply replace it. So I'll do Shift Option right arrow to select this entire word, and then I can just start typing, and it replaces what's there. You can also combine the Option and Shift keys to select by word. So Option Shift, and to the right, I'm selecting by word. I can select large pieces of text very quickly. And Option Shift and down arrow will do it by paragraph. And another one I want to mention that's in the Edit menu here is Select All, simply because so many people don't seem to use this. So if you want to select all your text, again, not useful in maybe a book, but very useful in a shorter piece of text that you're writing, Command A just selects everything. And now you can apply changes to it, copy it, delete it, replace it, etc. Now you can also use the FN or globe key on your keyboard with the arrow keys, but it doesn't actually work with the text cursor. It's working with scrolling. So if I were to use the FN and right arrow key, it scrolls to the end. It's the equivalent to the end key that's on larger keyboards. And FN and left arrow scroll to the beginning. FN down is the equivalent to page down, and FN and up is equivalent to page up. Notice that none of these change the position of the text cursor. They just scrolled like using two fingers on your trackpad or on the surface of your mouse. Now, speaking of deleting, say you wanted to delete some characters. Usually you would position the text cursor right after the character you want to delete and then press the delete key on your keyboard. But if you ever want to do the opposite and delete what's in front of the text cursor, you can do that. It's called a forward delete, and you can do it by holding the FN or globe key and pressing delete. That will delete forward. There are also some more obscure commands for doing this. Using Control and D will delete the next character, whereas using Control and H will delete the previous character. Now those are actually holdovers from older text editing apps that predate computers using things like mice and trackpads. And there are a whole bunch of other ones that are supported pretty widely in situations on your Mac with your edit text. Here's a list of them in order of increasing strangeness. They're good to know about, but in general, most things that you can do using the arrow keys and modifiers. So get comfortable using these modifiers and arrow keys if you like to edit text and would rather keep your hand on the keyboard the entire time instead of having to move to the mouse or trackpad to reposition the text cursor. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching.
If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.